Hi, I'm Amanda Morgan, and this is Not Just Cute, the podcast, where we discuss all kinds of topics to help bridge the gap that exists between what we know and what we do in early childhood education. We're starting conversations with academics, authors, decision makers, educators, and parents so that together we can improve the quality of early childhood education while at the same time protecting and respecting the childhood experience. This is episode 6 in a 9-episode series called Why We Play. For years, I've been speaking at workshops and conferences about the power of play in the early learning environment, which sparked the series of parent letters I've written called Why We Play. This month, I've been sharing a special podcast series with the same name, Why We Play. Every Tuesday and Thursday, there have been new episodes sharing the science and stories behind why we play. Evidence that play is not just cute, it's incredibly powerful. Before we jump in, a quick reminder that you can learn more about the Why We Play letters and grab a free sample letter at notjustcute.com/why we play. These letters will help you jumpstart important conversations in your learning community about the importance and power of play in your early childhood setting. People don't value what they don't understand. If you want to help parents and colleagues understand the value of play, the Why We Play letters are a fantastic tool to help you meet that goal. You can find this episode's show notes, which are always full of links, tidbits, and resources, at notjustcute.com/podcast/episode 67. If you're looking for research-based evidence to support play, you'll find the pieces I referenced today linked there. These final episodes in the series are a little bit shorter, but packed with play. We're digging into why we play in different play areas and with different play types. This episode's focus is sensory play. We'll take a look at why these bins full of rice, water, goop, and other media aren't just a big mess waiting to happen. They're a really important key to supporting healthy child development. Whether you're a champion for play or a playful learning skeptic, this series is perfect for you. Let's jump in. Think of your average preschooler. How long has this child been proficient with language? Depending upon the age and the individual child, some children really aren't even talking in a way that's intelligible to a stranger yet. Even those early talkers who've been chatting nonstop since their toddler days, the amount of time they've been talking can reasonably be measured in terms of months. Now, think about how long these same children have been seeing, smelling, hearing, feeling, tasting, and moving their whole lives, right? Children are wired to receive, process, and use sensory input at increasing degrees starting on day 1. This is why children will dive in hands first to discover a new thing. The senses are their most familiar, most basic way to explore, to process, and to come to understand new information. This is why we have to allow young children to learn through experience, not just lecture and words. These children need to use their senses and be fully engaged in meaningful experiences. One of the best places where this experiential sensory play happens is at the sensory table. Depending on the day, this bin may be filled with soft sand, squishy foam, or simply water. This is a very popular play area for young children, but to be honest, it often leaves visiting adults wondering what in the world this usually messy center is all about. And that's fair. If you took away the familiarity and the experience that you have with early childhood education and early learning environments, it's not too hard to see how random and foreign this table full of wild and varied materials could look to another adult's eyes. That's why it's important for us as early educators to know what this type of play is about, how to support it, and how to explain it to others. So let's go back to that same concept we mentioned at the beginning. Children are wired to begin to receive and use sensory input from day 1. The senses are their most familiar, most basic way to explore, process, and come to understand new information. And along the way, they're also building neurological pathways. With each experience, their sensory intake and processing becomes more acute. And as they're better able to use their senses, they're then better able to learn through their senses. So it's a self reinforcing process. As one of the truest open ended activities, sensory play provides an opportunity for every child to succeed. It's built in diversified learning. No matter whether you are gifted or delayed, if you're learning a new language or mastering your first language, you can't really fail as a learner when presented with a bin full of beans or a ball of Play Doh. Open ended sensory play simply invites the child to come and explore at their own level. I think of one example when I was teaching preschool and I was setting up a sensory bin with, I think it was cornmeal, and there were a variety of items along with some magnet wands. So the idea was that the children would use those wands to find the different metallic objects buried in the cornmeal, along with noticing the non metallic objects that were not attracted to the magnet. There were also scoops and other tools in the bin as well. Well, one of my own sons was a toddler at the time, and he was in the room while I was setting up for a group of older children. And of course, he wanted to check this bin out. So he drug the magnet wand around in the cornmeal and he found some things that would stick to it. Then he would just excitedly exclaim over and over, "Magnet! Magnet!" And he would show me what he had. So for him, he was just exploring the very basic concept of a magnet and trying out this new vocabulary word, magnet. Now, when I got my older preschoolers in there, I had one little boy in particular who was quite advanced. And as he approached this same sensory bin, he began methodically testing each object in the bin and then sorting and stacking them in bar graph style so that he could make comparisons and hypotheses. He was approaching that exact same open ended activity from a completely different level than my toddler son. So, whether it's color mixing with colored foam, washing toy cars in bubbly water, or digging for toy bugs in wood shavings, each child can play with those open ended materials in their own way, at their own level, exploring their own questions. Because of this, children who struggle to succeed or who are apprehensive about failure, whether socially or in other skill sets, they often feel a lot of safety and comfort in sensory play. The sensory input of something as simple as pouring water or running your fingers through rice is also often calming and even cathartic to many children who may be wrestling with things emotionally. Tuning into our senses can really be a centering experience. It can soothe the nervous child, it can distract the homesick child, and it can serve as an outlet for even the angry child. For children with special needs and sensory integration disorders, sensory play may even be used as a therapeutic experience. Sensory play is really part of the scientific process. Whether they're doing it out loud or within the internal dialogue of the mind, children have developed a question which leads them to investigate by grabbing or smelling or listening or rubbing or staring, whatever. They then use their senses to observe and collect data. And from that, they attempt to answer their own questions. This is a valid process of scientific inquiry, whether or not young children are always able to verbally communicate it that way. And all real learning begins with the process of scientific inquiry. Sensory play is most often recognized at the sensory table, but it happens in other areas of the preschool room and at home. We see it at the Play-Doh table. We see it in many creative art activities. We see it while using the light table, while helping with snack, while washing or playing at the kitchen sink or in the bathtub. And we see it so much while playing outside. Anywhere children are given the opportunity and the support necessary to physically explore with their senses, we see sensory play. Here are a few tips that might help with planning sensory play in your classroom. Consider your children first and foremost. What safety considerations do you need to be aware of? Particularly if they're still prone to putting everything in their mouths. There are some things that you won't want to fill your sensory table with, and the amount of supervision that it will require will be different. But that doesn't mean you can't do it at all. It just means you have to think through that process and adapt to those needs. Secondly, think about what interests your children, what catches their attention. Follow their lead in that way. You also want to pay attention to what types of things they're repelled by. Do they not like getting their hands sticky and dirty? Consider both the interests and the things that they don't like, and then look at where you can meet them where they are and maybe stretch them just a little bit. If you don't have a sensory table, I know they can be expensive, try making a sensory bin. Simply use a large, shallow plastic storage bin and set it either on a table or even on the floor. If you're worried about mess, try using a drop cloth or a simple tablecloth under that sensory bin or sensory table. You still want to encourage children to try to keep the items inside the bin and gently remind them when they need to help clean up, but it will make it easier for you to clean up those mistakes if you have a drop cloth that you can simply pick up and shake back into the bin. Again, gently remind the children to try to keep the items in the bin and to pick up the pieces that fall on the floor, but also remind yourself that learning to be aware of where they are in space and how to use their bodies to control the movement of the items in the bin, that is all part of the learning process. And as we know, all learning comes with making mistakes and learning from mistakes. Sensory play is really a powerhouse for learning. A bin of sand, seeds, or sawdust is more than just another way to keep children busy. It's a bustling factory of developmental growth. This one play area can effectively support every developmental domain. In addition to honing sensory and science knowledge, sensory play builds language and social skills as children negotiate with one another to share tools, create stories, and to try out new words to describe the new textures and ideas that they're experiencing. Small and large motor skills get a boost as children use the various media and tools of each day, scooping, pouring, and pinching as they go. Creative and divergent thinking is put to work as children are invited to explore and come up with new ways to use the materials. Math also comes into play as children sort, count, compare, and rearrange items in the bin. Other cognitive skills are fostered as well as children learn about specific concepts that are pertinent to the bin's specific contents that day. So they're playing with concepts like gravity, parts of plants, states of matter, color mixing. All of these things are easily explored and understood through exploratory sensory play. As children learn how to share the space and observe appropriate boundaries with sensory play, they also develop more self-control and body awareness. So while a child sees an alluring, fun place to dive in hands first, we know the sensory table is also a powerful activity for learning and development across all domains. It's another reason why we play. Thanks again for listening to Not Just Cute, the podcast. You can find show notes at notjustcute.com/podcast/episode 67. There you'll find links to resources that relate to the topics discussed today, as well as other fascinating tidbits I know you'll find interesting. If you're looking for something that I've referenced today that you don't find linked there, just email me and let me know. You can also hit up the show notes for a link to the Why We Play letters. Head to notjustcute.com/podcast/episode 67, or go straight to notjustcute.com/why we play to get signed up and download your free sample letter. Please be sure to tune in every Tuesday and Thursday in February to catch the full Why We Play series, focused on better understanding and better articulating to others why we play in early childhood education. I'm Amanda Morgan. You can read more on my blog and sign up for the Not Just Cute newsletter at notjustcute.com. You can also stay tuned for social media updates on Instagram by following me at Amanda_NotJustCute. Thanks for listening today, and as always, thank you for standing up for children and for childhood.